Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We are going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Frank, Ikuinen Kaamos, Indoctrination of the Lost. No context on this one, so let's just dive right in and see what's going on with this one. Ikuinen Kaamos. See what they're bringing to the table. Yeah, we've got a triplet groove within the four. A really interesting tonality too. I can't place the emotion on it. A little bit of vocal varieties, getting a ton of rhythmic variety. Yeah, really nice harmony on those on the guitar flourishes. Yeah, we got a hemiola going on between the triplet feel in the drums and the 4/4 in the guitar. Yep, they did that earlier too. I was fully expecting another brief interlude. Get them layered vocals. Do they have two vocalists or just one? Yeah, this is really light and loose. We didn't go back to it. That was just like driving me into the ground. Beautiful voice.
What have I become? There's no hope for absolution. Behold judgment here today.
Really nice buildup of intensity. Yeah, very cool. The 4 and the 3 have been ever present on this track. It's really fun finding how they intersect through most of these sections. Like right now the cymbals are doing a 6-8 or a triplet feeling 4, but our bass kick is giving us the 4-4. Oh, that's cool. So the bass kick is in the 6 now. I love the melody writing here. It's simultaneously eerie, but calming. It's reassuringly eerie. Is that an emotion? For the most part, we have a lot of transitions like that, where it's a bit rough, but we have these short little interludes that kind of pave things over a little bit. We got Fly of the Bumblebee on the right side. I don't know what's going on over here. Felt the change coming up. I think I misguessed it. I broke it up into a quintuplet. Not exactly where they went. Really fun intervals here. Bass coming through pretty strong in this section, help push us forward. Huh. Not quite where I thought we were going there. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so that right there at the end is one of my favorite things that the band does frequently, is they utilize more of a smooth, fluid type of riffage and then juxtapose it with something a bit more rigid that has more of a harsh attack to it. Like that doo 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 doo, got those legato notes in there juxtaposed with the da 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 da, really getting those harsher attacks. And so as you even saw in like my movement, I kind of like moved from a little bit of swaying to like a faster headbanging, and the song does this back and forth all throughout the track. It's really gorgeous in the way that it perfectly balances the styles of both sides without ever allowing one to fully dominate a section. So whether you enjoy more heavier, rigid metal riffage or more fluid melodic stuff, they've got your back. And I think it's a really great way to merge them together and reap the benefits of having both. Now, with this, it's crafted through their polymetric idea that we hear throughout this entire song, which is this 4 against 3. And the thing with 4 against 3 is that a lot of songs will utilize it where they're not polymetric, it just depends on your perspective. So if you have a triplet as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, that might be your 3, 4, but you might have heavy emphasis on the 1, or maybe the first one and the third one. So you get 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And from that, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And now you have a 4, 4 on the front of the beat where you're accenting 1 and 3. This is kind of polymetric, but it's more in line of polyrhythmic. They're not really creating two different types of phrasing. It just really depends on how you feel what the accents are. But the general idea is that they're going to be within the same amount of bars, and the phrasings in between are going to be similar as well. This is polymetric, where our 4 does not fit against the 3. And so if you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, your 4 might be 1, 2, 3, 4, where your 2 is actually going to be on the and of 2, if I remember that correctly. And so the endings of the bars are different, and it creates this juxtaposition within the time. You also end up with a really cool polyrhythmic beat called the hemiola, which is that we get 2 beats for every 3 beats in another, and that hemiola is everywhere in this track, and it's what gives it that really cool groove throughout most of the song. Now, granted, we don't always hear the 2 pulse or the 4 pulse and the 3 pulse together all the time. There's usually some sort of rhythmic dance going on against both of them where you don't really get the full immediacy of the hemiola, but you do get the residual element of it. So even if they are syncopating ideas in either the 3 or the 4, you're still kind of going to get a little bit of that groove in there, which is why so many moments of this track have this forward momentum component to it, why it always feels like we're pushing forward, and we're never really stagnating everywhere. And it's because of the rhythm, whether it is part of the guitar or drums or vocals or bass, is usually working in tandem with somebody else's rhythmic components to create this momentum through most of the song. And so the general groove, the not really a rush, but the drive to always progress forward and not really to reside anywhere, and the general flow of the song is all of it is kind of dictated and supported by their time signature usage here. And at least to me, it drives most of the track and creates a lot of what I really enjoyed out of it. Now that's just a little bit of complexity on the metric side, but to stay on the topic of time and math, we can also get into the rhythmic side of things. Now, granted, most of the guitar work and bass work and a little bit of the vocal work, I suppose, rhythmically is rigid notes where we're always working with eighth notes or always working with quarter notes or 16th notes. For the riff, they pick a note length and they run with it. But they do change up which beats are accented, which create elements of groove and rhythm and syncopation as well. So even though they're not changing anything up rhythmically, there is a rhythm that is changed out of it, a perceived one. Once we separate, and our minds do a really good job of this, separate out the accented beats, which are hit harder, and the non-accented beats, which are a bit quieter. And so there are some really phenomenal rhythmic ideas in here between all these instruments and sort of creating these, I can't really say counter rhythm, um, where we have multiple rhythmic ideas coming together and augmenting what each of the other is doing, creating something that's larger than the sum of their parts. And usually this is amplified by what the drums are doing, which are polyrhythmic constantly. Each limb is doing something in a different rhythm and sometimes even in a different time signature, as I pointed out a few times throughout this reaction, where somebody was usually in the one of the limbs was usually in the 3 and the other was in a 4. And so they really lay down the foundation for all of this rhythmic complexity that the rest of the band plays on top of. It's a solid foundation. And honestly, if the band had stopped there, I think the track is rhythmically interesting enough to stand on its own and probably work well within a gent adjacent genre, but that's not good enough for them. That's not where they want to stop. So the rhythmic side is fairly complex and interesting, but they also have some really neat harmonic and rhythmic aspects in the track, which is pretty much everything non-rhythmic. Harmonic and melodic is what I meant to say. Everything non-rhythmic, anything dealing with pitch. Harmonic-wise, we go through quite a different styles of harmony. We go through quite a few different types of chord progressions. We have several sections which are based on dyads, and we get really cool note intervals from there. Every section, for the most part, feels distinct from what came before it and what will come after it. That isn't to say that every single section has a unique identity to it on the harmonic area, but that very rarely is a harmonic idea reutilized or utilized twice in a row. I think there's still only maybe 3 or 4 concepts in here, but I mean, they jump between a ton of them. Let me take that back. There's only 3 or 4 that are used primarily throughout, but they do jump through a ton of them, and some of them are used in passing only for just a bar or two before forgotten, tossed on the floor, not to be reused later. So the song does have sort of a center to its identity. It's still very metal. It's still based heavily around pentatonic scales, and mostly working within bluesy adjacent concepts. But there is a little bit of classical in here too. In fact, one of the classical sections harmonically was also being played on an acoustic guitar, which gave it this classical guitar flair, which is really nice. And there was the opening, which I still don't have an emotional read on. It was a lot of things. I'm really curious what chords they used there. More specifically, I think the modes of the chords, which I think is really going to tell me what's happening, because it was lacking an identity, lacking a sense, or at least one that I could easily identify it. It's very cool because at moments I was like, oh, okay, I kind of know where they're going, and then I didn't know where they were going. um, so yeah, harmony is just all over the place, and it allows the song to be distinct amongst itself. Be distinct amongst its pairs. A unique track against other death metal. I think this is death metal. Additionally, though, we also have Some really great melodic lines. There's not a lot of times where we get strong melody. A lot of this track is riffage and growls, but there are a few sections where we do get strong ideas of melody. Particularly at the end, we had the call and response between the guitar and the vocals. The guitar was melodic, the vocals were growls. That was texture and rhythmic stuff. But we also had some really nice lead guitar lines throughout the track in two, three sections maybe. And I really like the way that they build their their melodies because they are a bit more technical, as a lot of the song is rhythmically diverse. They tend to have a faster rhythmic component to the melody, so it's difficult to play. But it's more about the flow of the notes, I think, that really draws me to them. It's the way they choose when to jump several steps, when to go up, when to go down, when to move the pitch in smaller steps. The overall flow of the solos or melody lines, it was always captivating. I think it was doubly important that they didn't show up too often. When they did, you're like, oh, okay, this is nice. They don't stick around for too long. I think the ending call and response was the longest time we ever had a lead guitar moment. And of course, it was trading back and forth, only playing half the time. But yeah, that was 16 bars, depending on what tempo you're counting at. And only playing, well, 16 bars played, like 30 bars total. But yeah, that's not a long time, but I think that's the longest time we ever heard any melody last. And so you have all of this riffage, which is melodic but isn't a melody. And then you get these moments you're like, ah, this is nice. And then it's gone. And then you have 2, 3 more minutes of melody, I mean, of melodic riffage. And then you get another melody. You're like, yes, let's go. I want to hear more of this. And they don't. So even though it isn't the most interesting melodic work, they drive anticipation and have a rising tension into a release component. At least for me, not everybody wants melody in their metal, but I do. And so every time it came up, I was like, yes, I'm glad this is here. Um Structure and transitions. I don't know what the structure is, but I do understand how they structured their music. This feels fairly linear to me, and it might be a completely linear track. I'm not 100% behind that. I don't know for sure. It would take another listen or two, at least one more, focusing entirely on structure to figure out what's going on here. But overall, it's a big, like, prog epic, right? Even if they repeat a section or two, on the whole, the song is about taking you across this massive journey of several different sections. But there is a foundation, a blueprint on how they go about crafting their song, and a lot of it deals with the flow, how often they rise in intensity, how often they diminish the intensity, and the transitions, which tend to be primarily these little 1 to 2 bar interludes. And you could always notice when they came about because their transitions are rather rough. This section and this section do not go together very well. So usually they'll take something that they were playing, maybe just a guitar line, and they'll overly compress it and kind of give it this fuzzy, quiet, muffled sound. We'll play that for a couple bars, and then we'll come back in full, maybe with a brand new idea, maybe with the same guitar line with something totally different. And they try to smooth it over this way, where they use something in the first section or something that's coming up next in this section, in this transition, in this interlude, with a completely different production on it. And it allows the two sections to kind of be smashed together in a way where you were doing this and now you're doing that. But there's a palette cleanser in the middle that really helps, like I said, smooth over the transition a little bit. It's still rough, by all means. It is not a smooth movement of ideas, but it is smoother than just smashing the two bars together and calling it a day, and I kind of appreciate it. It became kind of tropey by the end when we would come into a section and the volume would drop. I'm like, okay, two bars and big, we're back into it. I could see it happening. Um, but it's nice. It's fine. It's at least to my ears, it's better than just smashing two different ideas together and calling it a day. I'm not a real big fan of the harsh transitions, and this is an okay way of kind of paving over that a little bit and smoothing it out. But I did think it was funny. After like the third time, I was like, this is what they do. I can hear it, and you could begin to hear when they're doing one of these little interludes. Um, Oh, last, I mean, I kind of touched on this already, but I just want to give like a massive shout out to the drummer. Just phenomenal work all throughout this. The way that they find these intermeter grooves, things that work in both the three and the four, but isn't just like the pulse of either one of them. The polymetric playing, and some of the more melodic drumming that's going on in here. It is just the drummer elevates everything in this song. But on the same idea of variety, which the drummer brings a lot of metric and rhythmic variety, I do want to give a shout out to the vocalist who, I think many other vocalists would have come in here with one style and called it a day. And you know what? I don't think they would have lost any fans for it. But I really enjoy how the vocalist has a couple of different styles of harshes in here. Two, I think, maybe a third, but I'm not 100% percent sure I heard that third one. Definitely two, though, a high and a low. And layered them up at times, which kind of creates a third texture, even though it's not a third voice. And it allows the vocal element, while being purely textural and rhythmic with no melodic component, to have flow and movement to it. One of my biggest things about vocalists, harsh vocalists who just have that one pitch that they hit, is that it becomes monotonous. Um, And this is a good way to combat that. It's only two, but it switches things up from time to time. And at least to my ears, it's enough to perk back up and re listen into what the vocals are doing rather than push them into the background. So I guess that's a good place to stop here. I don't think I have anything else to talk about. Let's hit some lyrics. 100%. Okay, so like when it comes to death metal, lyrics are, it's not even 50-50. There are very few times that I connect with the lyrics to death metal. I don't know if it's the culture that surrounds it. I don't know if it's just what it was. I mean, I know death metal kind of sprouted lyrically from like the realms of schlocky B film horror, which I'm a huge fan of. But for some reason, I haven't really found that I've enjoyed the lyrics that tend to also be as campy. But this is a breath of fresh air. This is social commentary about how easy it is to create a following of people who don't know their place in life anymore. And I mean, that is a reductive concept of indoctrination of the lost. Like, that's literally, I just rephrased it, but that's exactly what it's about. Um, and it comes from the perspective of the cult icon, the one, indoctrinating all of these people and giving them a purpose that they don't have outside of this cult. He says, vows of grandeur, sincerely spoken, naively believed. This is what I sell, a promise of ecstasy. Later on, he says, vows of supremacy, indoctrination of the lost. If you feel like you're not that special, I'll tell you you are. Later on says, fear of tomorrow through the yesterday. Love that line. Right before the end, there's a stanza that says, "Icon of pure deception, my words are acid, now the boiling blisters cover you all. Benevolence is gone, compulsion left, dead in existence that I forced you to, and this I swear I will lay your world to waste, the realm in my shade. Oblivion is nigh." So yeah, it talks about how easy it is for people to use hate and supremacy and purpose to align people to their will. All you have to do is say, "You're not feeling special, but actually you are, and here's why." All you need to do is hate this other person. The words I spew are acidic. What I say is toxic. He literally states it. But that's the promises made. I think I skipped a line, but he says, yeah, "This is what I sell, the promise of ecstasy, swallowed by the masses, cherished by we all." Yeah, I mean, we see this left and right today. It is just present, ever present in our lives, especially if you're on the internet. You can find this in all sorts of corners, um, where there is, a group of person, a, a type of person who a group tend to circle around. And wouldn't you know it, that person sells some sort of superiority, usually paired with some sort of hatred of someone else. And usually that someone else is an other. It's not someone in particular, of course. It is a group of people, a type of people, a kind of people. And I really love how there isn't any specificity in the lyrics, because honestly, it can seep its way into any type of ideology. It's not related to a single political side. It's not related to a specific gender or sex or religion. Anything can reach this point of indoctrination and cult level, where it's all about hating somebody else to make yourself feel better. And of course, the truth through all of this is that the leaders, I mean, maybe they don't even care. It's all about the power at some point. Maybe they actually hate the people that they tell you to hate too, but maybe they don't. I mean, at the end of the day, their followers are giving them thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to tell them what the truth is and to make sure that they feel better. And even if this central character knows that what they spew is toxicity, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. The end result is the indoctrination of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people to an ideology of hatred and vitriol. And regardless of what the cult leader feels, the effects of it are very real. Those are my thoughts on Ikuinen Kaamos' Indoctrination of the Lost. Let me know what you thought of this track. Put your thoughts, perspectives, opinions down in the comment section. Above that, in the description box, there's a link to Linktree in there. It takes you to this menu. You can find links to my music, a link to the Discord servers, ways to support the channel, so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.